All right. Get all my little tabs toggled here so I can see you guys and see everything else I need to see. All right. Okay, so Nick dropped in the slides, but here is our game plan for today. So we are going to be talking about newsletters and how you can send them to your classes, whether it's parents that are probably going to be your audience, or if it's really your student body, depending on your role, up to you. But looking at how you can leverage newsletters, make them ultimately and use them in ParentSquare. So as most of us probably know, ParentSquare is our new district-wide communication tool. It is fabulous. You can easily share resources with parents because it's not necessarily opt-in. They're already loaded into the system as our students with ParentSquare when they get all registered and signed up for that. So it's a really easy way to communicate with your families and your students. So the benefit of newsletters is newsletters are kind of that fun type of thing you can share with families that highlight some of the exciting things that have been going on in your classes, achievements. You can even do spotlights for particular students or topics, major projects that you've done. It's really more of a celebration of learning and to show some of the positive things that are going on in your classroom to a wider audience. So that's how I like to think of newsletters, as a way to celebrate and show all the awesome things that your students are doing. So it's also just great for highlighting students as well. This is really going to be something if you're maybe a middle school or high school teacher and your students are the ones who are maybe consuming more of your communication and information in ParentSquare. Newsletters can be a really good way to kind of highlight them and give them a shout out for all that they're doing as well. All right, so we're going to look at some of the different templates that we have in ParentSquare. We're going to look at how you can build your own type of format for a newsletter if you like to create more of your own. And then we'll also look at how you can create some nice graphics and media to add into your newsletters too. So if you are interested in that, I'm going to be showing you a tool called Canva, not to be confused with our soon-to-be learning management system replacement for It's Learning, which is Canvas, but this is Canva. And Canva is a graphic design tool that really helps you beautify some of your pictures. If you want to add those into your newsletter, that's great. So that's our game plan for today. You can practice and build along with us as we do this. That's really the beauty of kind of a make and take session, is that I'll show you some examples. I'm going to be building right along with you so you can follow along, and you can even be building your own newsletter as we go, and you can send that so you can send that to your students or your families whenever you would like. All right. So helpful things. If you want to follow along with us, it's helpful if you're signed into ParentSquare, so you can do that on your browser. If you're using ParentSquare a lot on your phone, that's perfectly fine. You can technically do that on your phone. Personally, if I'm manipulating pictures and doing any type of editing on like Canva and pulling in those type of things, I know my focus is a lot better if I'm on a computer versus my cell phone. So you can sign into ParentSquare on your BCSE issued laptop if you would like. So definitely, like Nick said, if you have questions along the way, let me know. Nick is kind of being my person answering and looking at the chat for me in case I get too far along or I get to talking and I forget to see that little notification pop up. But it's helpful if you're signed into ParentSquare. It's just, ParentSquare, and you sign in with your Google account per usual. So that's kind of what I have set up here. I'm all signed in. I'm all good to go. All set there. And then other things is the other tool I was mentioning called Canva is a graphic design tool that, if you didn't know, everyone in BCSE has access to it, students and staff. And Canva is an awesome tool for you to use just on your own, but can be great for your newsletters as well. So the benefit of Canva is you also use your BCSE Google account, and we have Canva for Education set up in our district, which means that we get a lot of the paid Canva features totally for free, just because of this program they have for public K-12 schools. So use your BCSE Google account and you get access to all of these things, including ways that you can make fun little graphics and newsletters. All right. So going to go ahead and start to dive in. But before I do that, I just want to show you some examples here to maybe spark some inspiration for this. So the ones that I have, these are just screenshots, so I can't like link you to the specific newsletter itself, just because there's some specific names and things of students dropped in here. And I wanted to, keep things private for the people who originally made these, but I do want to show you some examples for the ones that gave me permission to put these on here. So here's an example of the one that Josh Burnett sends out each week. He does a really nice job making it consistent. He has similar headings and blocks and chunks and topics each time. And that's a tip that I would recommend to you as you start to map out your newsletter. That's something that I do all the time. If you've ever been in a meeting with me, I always have like scrap pieces of paper and I'm mapping things out. That's kind of what I even was doing for this session. That's a way for you to brainstorm. What are some common things I want to include in my newsletter each month that I send it, or however often you send it? Maybe you always have a section that is a student spotlight, or you have a section that's upcoming projects or upcoming dates, things to remember. So you can build in some of those common elements so you don't feel like you're spinning your wheels each time. And it's almost like a reminder for you that, okay, that's something I can always plug into this newsletter in case, you have a month where maybe there's not so much happening or there's a lot of things going on. It kind of organizes that flow of information. So here's another example. This is more of a building-wide newsletter from CSA Lincoln. And he has a similar type of format on here as well, and always has a nice little graphic here with the school logo and school phrase there too. If you have one for your class, you can easily make that to where it's a consistent kind of class motto and your name across the top, so parents are familiar with that. Here's another school-wide example. At Clifty, they always have lots of pictures in there, so that's kind of how they break up some of their content, is putting in lots of pictures of the students. More examples here. East High School has the similar type of layout here. They always have some general contact information at the top, and then the different announcements and events follow that. Here's another one. This is pretty simple, but it's nice and clean. It's easy to follow. So they use big color blocks to break up these blocks of text. And that is also, this is a prime example of using the white space very well. If you have too many colors and too many things going on, it becomes too overwhelming for our minds to process all of that content. So Northside does a really good job of putting information on here, but leaving some white space as well so that it breaks it up and chunks the information for you. And then here is more of a classroom newsletter example. So this is from some awesome 5th grade teachers that let me borrow this and put this in here after I asked them and saw this example. So another example, they have consistent ones each week where they have each of the subject areas. Those are their consistent things in their newsletter each time that they send this out. At the very bottom, they have a little student spotlight where they highlight something awesome that a student or a group of students did in their class. So very easy. They just plug in the information. They have some pictures at the bottom of the students. Into a similar type of layout. They always have this heading across the top, which looks like they've also made in the graphic design tool Canva, and plug that in. So these are just some examples to spark your thinking and your creativity. By no means do yours have to look exactly like this. That's just an example of something that you could do. So what we're going to do now is actually dive into ParentSquare and look at some of these different examples that are there, some of the templates and things that you can use, and get started on the actual building and creation part. So I'm going to go through and make this along with you. And I'm making this in a fake group. So I think maybe Nick and I are the only people in this group. So if I make a newsletter that doesn't look that great, Nick's the only other person that's going to see it. So don't judge me too harshly, Nick. Hopefully it doesn't look too bad. I'm a little new at this as well for all of you on this call. I haven't leveraged all these features yet. So we're going to make this together and learn along with each other. Okay. So to make your newsletter, you're going to go to your class or your specific space where you've been communicating information. I will say my profile is a little bit different, and I don't have classes on here like you all do, but that is where you can go to do that. I don't know if we have any admins on this. I know they're going to be watching the recording afterwards, but if you're an administrator, that's going to be at the school level. Teachers, it's going to be more at your course level. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Nick. Hopefully that was right.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Thank you. And posts are where you're going to communicate this information. So posts are more of the one-way communication tool. It's not necessarily going to be an individual message that you're going to send to students. Newsletter doesn't really make sense to, send out to just like a small group of parents. It's ultimately for the entire group of people associated with this to do this. Yes, they're there to reach everyone. Thank you, Nick. Yep. So that's the benefit of this. They reach everyone, that everyone has at least gotten this information, had it sent to them. So that's what I'm going to do. Post over here on the left-hand side is how I can start to do this. A nice little thing along the way is if you don't quite finish what we're starting on today, you're like, well, I'm going to wait and, send this out later this week. Anything that I have started over here, if I save it as a draft, I can go back and pick up right where I left off on this newsletter. So don't feel like you have to go out there and send what we work on today if you're not quite ready to do that. If you're still working on it, you're still trying to figure out how you want this to be formatted, or it's just purely a practice one, you can just save it and go back and revisit it. That's exactly what I did right there. It was one where I was tinkering with it yesterday and I saved it. So I can go back and, send out whenever I'm ready. Okay. So I click here the new pencil for new post, and that's where I get into this editing view. So up here is where it's ultimately going to decide who gets to see this. My view, again, is a little bit different than yours. That's where it's going to, probably default to your classes. And so everyone can see it because it's a post versus a message. And your subject here can basically be like maybe newsletter, October newsletter, whatever you would like it to do. These can be as frequent or as infrequent as you would like them to be. I think that some buildings have different expectations. If your building doesn't quite have that yet, maybe check in with your administrator in case you're not sure. But I've seen some buildings do monthly, some other buildings do weekly. So that's just an example there. Okay. So in this little text field, this is where all of the magic happens in ParentSquare. I see you have some of your basic just text editing options here, bold, italicize, underline, some of those things. But there's some really awesome features here a little bit further over. So you can always insert emojis if you would like, but I think it's not your full, iOS emoji list. You can add pictures. This is one way to do that. You can add video, but this plus button is where you have some more options in here. So this is where I can add links and tables, but use template is where if you're getting started on ParentSquare and you really want to learn about some of the different templates that are out there and get your feet wet without having to feel like you're starting from scratch, this use template button is a really good way of doing that. So we have some that we've published for the district. Some of your school administrators, your principals have even created their own and pushed that out to all of you in your building. Like I know that's something they've done at Southside. That's something they've done at Lincoln, I believe, just based on what I've seen in some of their newsletters. So there's just some examples on here that you can pull from. We were looking at one yesterday that looked really nice, and it was just this bordered one that ParentSquare gave us already. So you can select one of these templates. If you don't like it, you can delete it, but I'm going to select this one. And it just walks me through. If I want to go through a guided tutorial, it shows me how I can go through and edit this. But essentially, this gives me a base to start going on this newsletter, which is really nice and easy because it just is a plug-in, my content and information there. It will give me some ideas here on what size this picture has to be. So if you're adding in a picture, this is how you would edit those dimensions. And that's where Canva, the other tool I talked about, can come into play. But it's just giving you some pointers here on what the size of this frame is so it looks nice and clean on there. All right, so I can add in my info. We're going to make this October 2022 because that's what it actually is. It's not 2021 anymore. All right, so I can change some of those fonts and features there. If I don't like what I just did, I can undo it. You have all these undo, redo buttons across the top, but it's formatted there for me already. If I want to plug this in differently, I can. It has some of those common things built in for me already. So if I've mapped out that I want important dates to be something that I always have included on here, I can add that in. So I can say it's learning maintenance, not that there's actually not, it's learning maintenance. So this is a made up newsletter, by the way. The things I'm putting on here are not actually happening. And I can add the date, I can add other items, just keep going along there. And basically this template is kind of like an invisible table where there's lines here that's divided some of this content for me. So I don't have to mess with anything there. If I just click here, I can delete some of this content, do whatever I need to do. I can add a student spotlight here if I would like, type out some of this text. Delete some of it if I would like, because it's just a bunch of gibberish here at the moment. Can type out more information there, more along the way. And if I don't want this to say principal's message, I can delete that. I can put something else there. Again, it's all customizable for you. So you can keep on going, continue to do this, keep on going along. So whenever I get to one of these spaces here where I want to change this picture, this is where I have some flexibility. So right now, this is just kind of a blank cell. It's aligned and set up the way I want. I don't probably want this 1200 by 600 block to stay there, but what you might want to do is decide what picture you want to be there. So maybe, I'm going to add a picture and I want to use this awesome tool called Canva to add a picture to my newsletter. So Canva, again, is that graphic design tool. You use your BCSC Google account to get into it. And there's all different kinds of resources on here. But let's say that what I would like to do is to add in a logo. So let's say I'm making a class logo. For this one, I'll just make like a tech logo. So there's tons of examples on here. If I want to just type in an example of like class newsletter, I could look there to find examples of maybe some of the things that Canva has put in their newsletters. If I like some of these graphics and those things, I can certainly save some of those things as pictures and then upload them into ParentSquare. The only warning that I will give you, and I'm someone who loves Canva, I love all the things they have on here, love these templates, like this is such a cute little newsletter. The only thing is that if you build your newsletter and you type out everything here on this little Canva template, and then you just put that as a link, or you just add it as an attachment on ParentSquare, it won't translate anything because ParentSquare is going to read this Canva newsletter as a picture or as a PDF. So if you have families that have translations set up, it basically won't translate any of that for them in their preferred language. So that's just something to be mindful of. Canva is great for creating little headings and blocks and logos, little designs for your classroom newsletters, but I would avoid building your entire newsletter in Canva just because it creates that language barrier for your families. So just a little bit of a heads up. Link to Canva through class tag or separately. I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding the question.
What is class tag?
That's another it can be behavior, but also communication tool.
I have no help on that one.
Oh, okay. Now I think I'm following. So to get to Canva, that's totally separate. I would not add a link from a Canva newsletter into ParentSquare just because it's going to be a barrier. I just pulled this up separately. You can't get to Canva from ParentSquare. It's just a separate website. So it's just canva.com, and you use your BCSC Google account to authenticate. When I'm here is when I can get some newsletter graphics and those things. Yep. And if you just want lesson ideas and resources, this is a whole rabbit hole. I'm just going to warn you, you'll spend hours going through these awesome templates. I know that's something that I have done is if I go and I start looking at Canva stuff, I better block off like a solid 20, 30 minutes because I start looking at designs and I want all of them. So that's kind of a fun thing that's out there. So I think what we're going to do is we were looking at logos, so we can make a little tech logo. So if I want one related to technology, I can search there. There are classroom newsletter logos that you can look here. Or if you even, you want to use your school mascot and build a little logo to add onto your newsletters that has your Huskies or your Taylorsville Bears, all of those things, you can easily do that. You just need to get that little logo from your principal administrator, someone, maybe your school website. And then if I like the way that like one of these logos looks, I can just add my, my Husky on there, my North Bulldog into this if I like some of these other designs that are here. It's totally up to you. So I kind of like this one because it's like thinking in brain. This doesn't really have our BCSC color scheme, but we're just going to go with it. I'm liking the variety of color here. Helps if I spell things correctly. If I can just plug in some of that info. And whenever I decided that, wow, this looks amazing, I really like this, before I make any edits this or go any further or download it or do whatever, because I can customize this to whatever I want to do on Canva. It's helpful if I go back here and I look and think, okay, what were these dimensions again? Maybe I should edit and resize whatever I'm working on here if I know that I wanted to go into one of these specific places and not have it totally distort the way my picture looks. So this is a very square shaped logo right now, but let's say I want to put that at the very top of this newsletter. So I'm gonna have to change this a little bit. So what I'm going to do on Canva is if I go to resize, I can change this to where it's a better representation of what it is right here. So it's probably going to make this look a little wonky at first. But there we go. So it resized that for me. So now I know that it's going to fit on this little frame here for my newsletter. What the nice thing is that Canva is super smart and it realized that this is a really narrow body of text. Maybe what I'm trying to do is make a heading for a newsletter or an online class. So Canva, being smart, has populated some even better examples over here on the left-hand side of the screen that I can also use. So it's super smart. It figures out what design templates that yours is looking similar to based on what other users have done and gives you more recommendations. So if I don't like this one anymore, maybe I want to move to a different one, I can easily do that. And these are all going to be the same dimensions of what I just resized this to. So let's say that instead I kind of like the looks of this one. I'm going to replace that. And this is maybe where I can make this look a little bit better. Plug in my info, do whatever I need to do. All right, I'm going to check my dimensions again, but it's the same. It should say the same. So 200 by 50, which is what I want it to be on my newsletter. And whenever I'm finished making this graphic, I'm just going to click share, but I'm actually not going to share with anyone. I'm just going to download it. So there's this download button a little bit further over onto the right. And I can decide how I want this. If you want it to be a transparent background, if you have some white space, you can do that. For this example, I'm just going to leave this the way it is, and we're just going to click download. And it saved it on my computer. So the next thing is just uploading it onto ParentSquare. And if you're wondering, like, how do I do some of these things on Canva? I'm going to add to the very back of this slideshow presentation. I apologize for not doing this earlier, but Nick and I did some trainings last year on Canva and how you can use it for graphic design. And I know Nick did one a couple of weeks ago, actually, on graphic design in Canva too, that has a wealth of resources on getting started with this, including some of the different things that you can use for resizing, some of the different templates that are here, how you can add your own pictures and media into this and edit them, and then also how you can download it in different ways. So he is a little bit more in depth on that, but just beginners here, use some of these templates to get started. And it just, you know, makes you look like you're a professional graphic designer, even if you're not like me. So it makes my stuff look a lot better. So whenever I'm finished right there, I'm just going to click remove. And then what I can do is just drag and, oh, well, let me drag and drop, just kidding. I can add in a picture here to this cell. So that did not go to the size that I thought it would. Nick, do you have a suggestion on that?
No, like I would do everything that,
Yeah, I don't know why it made it blurry. It was the same size as what it said to do.
yeah, I was working earlier.
I'll try a different one. We'll do this one instead, further down. All right, but in theory, that is how it should work. Other thing you can do is, instead of converting it from the size that we had here, if I saw another picture I wanted, I can always add a picture into ParentSquare and then resize it on here if I want. It's just going to be a little bit more clicking and dragging versus doing that bit of resizing in Canva. All right, so if I want to add in something else, and this is like a very fake newsletter, so there's some very random things on here, like a picture of my dog. We're going to download this just so I can show you another thing that we can download and put on here. We're going to download this as JPEG. Just because I want to see how this looks. And I can upload this into here. I didn't change the dimensions, but that is something that you can do. I'm going to click a little bit further down because maybe this is where I want to put that picture. And again, it's just insert image. If you're a keyboard shortcut person, you hover over any of these tools on ParentSquare, it tells you the keyboard shortcuts as well. So if you are doing this often, you want to get super speedy, you can certainly go through and memorize some of those or write them out and print them. I've done that for different tools before if I know I'm going to be using them a lot. So that's another hack that you can do there. All right, so that one copied over a little bit better. And I just resized that here in the tool itself. So I can just keep going along, plugging through, typing in the information that I want, making this look all great. This is the most random collection of things. Fake students, big tech update and a picture of my dog. So yeah, this is not going to go out to anyone except for, I guess, Nick, if I actually send it. So you can keep adding things, do what you need to do. What's nice about this is that as you're doing this, it is automatically saving. So if I look over here on the right-hand side of my screen, it tells me that it's saving this along the way, which is super helpful if you're, you get sidetracked, which we often do in education, or, you have to step away for a second. That's just a helpful thing to know. Whenever I am ready to send this and to look at all of this, you have some different options here as well. So newsletters, I feel like people typically don't change the setting here on the notification, like it just gets sent to people, based on their individual preferred user settings. If you want to override it and make sure that everyone gets this right now, right when I plan to send it, you can do that. But I would just keep it maybe at preferred time, especially if you send out some other messages to parents that day. This post now, this arrow right here is a really helpful option for you as you do this. So I can post this right now if I feel like it's final and it's fantastic and it's great. If I'm like, I'm going to come back and work on this and finish this up maybe tomorrow, a few days from now, I can just use save draft and come back and work on it later. If I want to preview it before I send it to, double check that I don't have any typos or to make sure that this looks really great, I can preview it, look through. My dog looks adorable. This is really some insightful stuff on here. I love it. If I really want to make sure that it looks the way I want to, especially on a mobile device, you can also do send me a test. So it will send you a fake version of your newsletter. It's not going to anyone else but you. But that's another option that you have. To get out of this preview, I just click the X button and it takes me back to my editing view so I can continue to edit as I need to. But the other option I have here is schedule. So if you are working ahead and just know that on Fridays is when you want to send out your newsletter, or maybe it's first thing on Monday mornings and you worked on it, on a weekend or on a Friday, whatever have you, I can do schedule and select the day and time that I want this to be delivered to families and go out. So you have some options there as well. So that's the gist in getting started with these newsletters. I will say that the templates that you have here on this under this little plus button and then use template, there's some helpful ones that are on here if you just want to use those to get started. Otherwise, if you want to start more from a blank type of look here, you add in pictures. Those can almost act as your way of breaking up this content. What I will recommend that you do is if you do add any pictures in at some point in time, that you add alternative text to them. So if I have this picture of my dog and it's more of like, I guess, a flyer versus just a picture, I need to add alternative text to that just because it makes it more accessible. Some of our families are going to be reading with their ears, so they'll have this read aloud to them. And if you don't add alt text, it doesn't come across to them what the actual picture is. It's great for some of our families that are blind, low vision. They need to have that audio option versus just visuals only. So to add alt text, it's just a best practice for an accessibility standpoint. If I click this picture here, it's just this little I button. If you don't know what any of these mean, anytime you hover over a button on ParentSquare, it reminds you of what it does. That I can just click alternative text, and that's where I give a short little description of what this picture is. Smiling. I can update that. So now if someone is relying on a screen reader to see and to understand what my newsletter says, they have that option now. They can also engage and enjoy with what this content is. So I can also add that up here at the top. Update it and go from there. So that's how you can do this. And I can schedule this and send this out to my group. So I'm going to have this scheduled to go out tomorrow. Let's do tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we're just going to do send it user time, schedule it and send it. All right. And I don't have very many people in this group, so it's just making me know that there's only one person in this group that's going to get it. So Nick, enjoy this newsletter when you get this tomorrow morning. But that is how you use this feature set in ParentSquare and bring in some Canva features. So now is the time if you have questions, we can answer some of those. Otherwise, you can continue to tinker and play, preview your example newsletters, get some inspiration that's out there. If you're feeling creative and you want to share an example of your newsletter with us to spark some more inspiration, on my slide deck on slide 10, and this is just an option, by no means is this a requirement. The kind of a fun twist on these make and take sessions is that we share what we've made in the session, or we share an example of something that we found inspiring. So I put some examples on here. If you want to take a screenshot of your newsletter, or maybe one you've made today or one that you really liked, you can add that here. Don't have to, but it's an option there as well. And this just continues to grow the more times that people participate in this PD and make their own newsletters. And if you're wondering, how do I take a screenshot? There's a keyboard shortcut. It's the Windows button and then print screen. It's at the very top. It's the F10 button. Otherwise, you can use the snipping tool on your computer. But that is just an option. Now is the time where you can ask questions and let us know what you thought of the session if you want more ParentSquare. So ask away if you got questions.